Here's a sentence that sounds like a contradiction until you actually break it down. Being broke is expensive. Not in the obvious way, not, I have less money so things are harder. I mean literally dollar for dollar. Poor people often pay more for the exact same things rich people get cheaper. Same product, same service, higher price if you don't have money. Quick disclaimer, as always, not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice, just walking through a pattern that's genuinely well documented, and one I lived through myself for years before I understood it. Here's what's actually going on. There's a real, researched phenomenon economists call the poverty premium, the extra cost that shows up specifically because someone doesn't have enough cash or credit history to access the cheaper option. It's not one big obvious tax. It's dozens of small ones, stacked on top of each other quietly in places you'd never think to check. I think the reason this stays invisible is that each individual instance looks small and forgettable. A slightly higher interest rate here. A slightly higher insurance premium there. Nobody sits down and adds up the total, so nobody sees the actual size of it. When you do add it up, the number gets genuinely staggering. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where these hidden costs lie, the actual math behind several of them. And, because this isn't just a documentary about a problem, what you can specifically do to escape as many of them as possible, at whatever income level you're at right now. Let's name the first blocker directly, because it explains why this trap is so hard to escape. Almost every one of these extra costs is priced based on risk, and being broke, statistically, reads as risk to whoever's setting the price, even when you, personally, are completely reliable. The system can't see your character. It only sees your numbers. Let's start with credit. If you have a lower credit score, often because of thin credit history rather than actual missed payments, you get offered higher interest rates on everything. Car loans, credit cards, even some rental applications now check credit. Here's the actual math. Someone with excellent credit might get a car loan at 6%. Someone with poor credit, same car, same price, might get offered 14 or 15%. On a $25,000 car loan over 5 years, that gap alone can cost several $1,000s in extra interest for the identical car. Here's where it compounds further, literally. That same lower score often means higher insurance premiums too. Many states allow credit-based insurance scoring, meaning your car insurance and even home insurance can cost more, sometimes significantly more, purely because of credit history that has nothing to do with your actual driving or home ownership. Let's walk through banking next, because this one genuinely surprised me when I first learned it. If you can't maintain a minimum balance, a lot of checking accounts charge monthly maintenance fees, often somewhere around $10 to $15 a month. That's up to $180 a year, just for the privilege of having an account, a fee that anyone with a comfortable cushion simply never pays, because they clear the minimum balance without even trying. And if you don't have a bank account at all, which happens more than people assume, check cashing services often charge a percentage of every check just to convert it to cash you can actually spend, sometimes 1 to 5% per check. On a $2,000 paycheck, that's up to $100, disappearing before the money's even in your hand, every single pay period. I remember paying an overdraft fee once, back when I had basically no cushion, for being $11 short on a transaction. The fee was $35. $35 to cover an $11 gap. That one moment stuck with me, because it was the first time I actually understood how brutally the math worked against people without a buffer. Here's a misconception worth correcting directly. People assume these costs are somehow the fault of poor financial decisions. Sometimes they are. But a huge portion of the poverty premium exists purely because of structural pricing, not personal choices. The system charges more specifically because you have less room to absorb a mistake or a missed payment, which is exactly backwards from what would actually help. Let's keep walking through this, because there are a few more categories that genuinely surprised me when I first added them all up. Buying in bulk. If you've got the cash upfront and the storage space, Buying larger quantities is almost always cheaper per unit. Groceries, household goods, even things like laundry detergent. Someone with $300 of slack in their budget can buy a big pack and save maybe 20 to 30% per unit over time. Someone living paycheck to paycheck often can't front that upfront cost, even though the smaller, more expensive option costs more per unit every single time they buy it. The math is genuinely reversed. The person with less money ends up spending more per item month after month. Rent-to-own and payday loans are the most extreme version of this entire pattern. A furniture or appliance rent-to-own plan can end up costing 2 to 3 times the retail price of the item once all the payments are added up, specifically because it's marketed to people who can't afford the upfront cost. And payday loans, for anyone unfamiliar, can carry effective annual interest rates in the triple digits, sometimes north of 300% annualized, specifically because they're built for people with no other option in an emergency. Here's a category people rarely think about: time itself, and specifically the time cost of not having flexibility. If your car breaks down and you don't have savings, you might miss shifts, which costs income directly on top of the repair cost itself. Someone with an emergency fund pays for the repair and loses zero income. Someone without it pays for the repair and loses income at the exact same time, compounding the hit. Here's the second misconception worth clearing up. People think the fix is simply get more income and the problem solves itself. Income helps, obviously, but a lot of these specific costs, banking fees, credit-based insurance pricing, bulk buying access, are about structure and cushion, not raw income alone. Someone earning a solid income with zero savings buffer can still get hit by several of these at once. I think about my own overdraft moment often, actually, because it wasn't really about being irresponsible with money. It was about having zero margin for a normal, small mistake, and the system charging accordingly. Let's talk about what actually breaks this cycle, because naming the problem without a way out isn't especially useful. The first move is the smallest possible emergency cushion, even a couple $100s specifically set aside, separate from everyday spending. That alone eliminates most overdraft situations and a huge share of the missed a payment, credit score drops, everything gets more expensive spiral. It's not about being fully protected. It's about having just enough buffer that one small surprise doesn't cascade into several bigger costs. Second, checking specifically for fee-free banking options. Many credit unions and some online banks have no minimum balance requirements and no monthly maintenance fees at all. That single switch alone can eliminate a real, recurring cost with zero downside. Third, and this one's slower but genuinely powerful, even small, consistent, on-time payments on any existing credit, even something as simple as a secured card used lightly and paid off monthly, gradually improves the score that so many of these other costs are quietly priced against. It's not instant, but every point of improvement chips away at the interest rate and insurance premium gap over time. So here's the takeaway, the whole video in one line. Being broke doesn't just mean having less. It means paying more for the same things, over and over, until the gap itself becomes one of the biggest reasons it's hard to stop being broke. I've paid several of these exact costs myself, at different points, before I understood what was actually happening. And closing that gap, piece by piece, was a bigger part of my own financial turnaround than any single investment decision ever was. If you want to see the specific order I'd tackle these in if I were starting completely over, I actually have a full video on that. But don't click on it just yet. Stay with me one more second. If you want to be the kind of person who stops paying the invisible tax on being broke, that's exactly what hitting subscribe here means. Not for me. For the version of you that's tired of the math working against them.